During the extreme heat, a tragedy that is both preventable and heartbreaking continues to claim young lives across our country. Hot car deaths, a consequence of a child being accidentally left in a vehicle as temperatures soar, are incidents that no family should ever endure. These tragic losses bring a stark reminder of the dangers of a hot car and the critical importance of staying aware even when there's a disruption in your routine. Joining us now is Angela Jones, the mother of a 3-year-old little girl who passed away back in 2019. Angela, thank you so much for joining us. It's extremely brave to share your story. This is a heartbreaking reality that can happen to anyone. Angela, do we still got you? Okay, good.
Yes, sorry about that. Hi. Thank you for having me, Jane. I appreciate you speaking with me today.
Absolutely. Tell us more about your little girl and how you're honoring her life.
My youngest, her name is Charlotte. We called her Charlie for short. She passed away on September 3rd, 2019, so we're coming up on 5 years. She was the light of our family. She was the sassy one, the fun one, the silly one. We miss her tremendously in our family, but we keep her memory alive. We talk about her constantly. I try to share our story as hard as it is to do so we can spread awareness and hope that other families don't have to endure what we've endured, and give families some education that this can happen and some ways to prevent it from happening.
You live in Arizona. It was September. Share with us more about the events that unfolded that day.
So it was Tuesday. It was the day after Labor Day. Our family had a planned vacation the following day to California, and I work away from home. My husband works from home. It was a day where we were going to be out of our routine because our youngest, Charlie, was not going to be going to preschool that day. She was going to stay home with my husband because we had this planned vacation, so we didn't pay for preschool for that whole week. So he, that morning, brought all 3 girls with him to drop the older 2 off at their elementary school. And normally he would bring her to preschool. That morning, he made his way back home, not realizing when he got out of the truck that she was still inside. And he went inside to do his normal work, working from home day. It wasn't until I called him on my lunch break and asked him what she was doing. And immediately in his voice, I could hear a panic, and I knew something was very wrong. And my mind went to the pool, and that wasn't the case. And he ran, and he's like, oh my God. And it ended up, she was just 20 feet from him in our vehicle, in our driveway. And he was just out of routine that morning, where he normally would drop them all off, never had the kids home with him. But that morning he was supposed to have her, and events went into play, and tragically she didn't make it.
What were some of the range of the emotions that you and your family felt? I mean, this is such a heartbreaking tragedy.
Why? How did this happen? Were the emotions that immediately we were feeling. We never in our craziest nightmares would have ever thought that this could happen. We did everything that we could to protect our children, pool fences, outlet plugs, all the things that you do when you have kids to, make your home safe. And this was never something that crossed our minds. You might have seen it on TV and you're like, oh my gosh, that would never happen to us. How could someone leave a child in a car? So those, anger, guilt, all the whole range of emotions, of course. And it, you come to learn how this happens. And I'm speaking to so many families that this has happened to. Just the common factor is a lot of times you're out of that routine. Either someone else driving your child around, or a different parent doing something different than they normally do, is in almost half the cases is what happens.
And Angela, you've dedicated yourself to advocacy, spreading awareness. What do you want to see done in America to make sure other families don't experience the loss that yours has?
So the biggest thing that can save the most lives is having vehicle manufacturers insert a sensor inside the car that will sense a human in there, even when the car is not running. So not just a backseat alert. So like a lot of cars have, if you open the back door and then close it and then you stop the car to get out, it will alert on your dashboard to check the back seat. That is one safety measure that some vehicles have. However, it is not foolproof, and there has been a handful of children that have died even with these alerts in the vehicle. What needs to happen is an actual sensor. These exist. They are in some vehicles now. They are very cost effective, somewhere around the realm of $20. And we need the National Highway Transportation Safety Advisory Board to pass the rule to have this law go into place and start happening. Because if this doesn't, this law doesn't go into effect, it's just going to keep happening. And parents and caregivers have very, very busy lives. People are, distracted a lot and are going from place to place. And although we can spread the awareness of different things to do when you don't have those sensors, such as placing a purse in the back seat or taking your shoe off and putting it in the back seat, always looking in the back seat before you get out of the car. You can do all those things, but the thing that's going to save the most lives is having that sensor in place where if you do have that sensor, it can alert your phone. It would text you. That in and of itself would have saved my daughter. My husband was right there. He had his phone. He was working. It would have texted him and said, there's someone in the car. It will honk the horn. It can roll down the windows. It will then eventually call, the police if it came and nobody answered those alerts that came before that. So that's what we really need to happen.
Absolutely. Life-changing technology. Angela, sharing your story helps parents, caregivers alike understand how this can happen to anyone. So I want to thank you so much for opening your heart, sharing your daughter with us. She's beautiful, and we're keeping her in our hearts here at Fox Weather as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And we have a heartbreaking follow-up for you this morning about those twin girls found dead in a hot vehicle in Norman.
Family is talking, emphasizing that this truly was just an accident. The girls, Avery and Ariel, they say were loved by many people.
Norman police say the twins were left inside that car an extended period of time Thursday afternoon and later found by family members. One of the parents told News 4 they left the girls in the care of another family member. The two children were supposed to be dropped off at daycare. Instead, they were accidentally left in the car. That same family member went to pick up the twin siblings, and that's when they realized the twins were never dropped off. They were still in the back seat, and it was too late for them to be saved.
Father tells us the entire family is devastated, and they've put out a statement saying they were the best girls in the world had ever seen. It honestly hurts because the girls were deeply loved and cared for. We can tell you there in Norman, police are still investigating.
Hi, and welcome back to Nikki Scoops. Today I will be talking about 7 stories that made the headlines. Most of these stories will be about the harm or death of children, so if that's something you can't handle, then you might want to skip this whole video. This is just a warning how quickly things can escalate when you are too busy with life, and how minor mistakes can lead to a lifetime of heartaches and consequences. If you enjoy this video, please hit the like button to help me reach other viewers who are interested in these types of videos. Thanks, and enjoy the video. An Oklahoma family is mourning the death of their 2 two-year-old children who were found dead in a car after a caretaker reportedly forgot to drop them off at daycare last week. 2-year-olds Ariel and Avery were found inside a vehicle after cops responded for a welfare check in Norman, Oklahoma around 3 p.m. on Thursday. Both of them were pronounced dead at the scene on the 1000 block of Westbrook Street, according to the Norman Police Department. Local KF4 reported that officers performing a welfare check discovering the 2-year-old twins, Ariel and Avery Suter, unresponsive in a car that stopped on a street in a neighborhood outside Norman, Oklahoma. Marshall Suter, the girls' father, spoke to KF4 and said a trusted family member was supposed to drop the girls off but forgot. They were the best girls the world has ever seen. It honestly hurts because the girls were so deeply loved and cared for. The initial investigation indicates that the two children were accidentally left in the vehicle for an extended period of time and were later located by family, the department said, without identifying who had left them. Temperatures in Norman reached 90 degrees that day. The twins' tragic deaths appeared to be the first heat-related car deaths of the year to occur in Oklahoma. The cause of death has yet to be determined. A GoFundMe was started by their cousin Courtney Uzzi to help fund funeral costs. All funds will be used to give these precious little babies the funeral they deserve and take some weight off of this father's shoulders after dealing with such a tragic and heartbreaking loss, wrote Uzzi. The GoFundMe link for Ariel and Avery Suter will be posted in the description. Sending my condolences and prayers to family.
We just appeared in court in the case of the people of the state of New York versus Juan Rodriguez. I would not be honest if I would tell you that the family is, I just have to say, very frustrated at this point. We understand, we acknowledge that this is a case of a lot of importance. We understand the death of two children. My client, his wife, they're reeling over this. This is the holiday season. It was a difficult Thanksgiving, to say the least, for them and their family without their beautiful twins, Phoenix and Luna. We had every expectation that we would come to court today and there would be some resolution of the case. That was a commitment that was made by the end of the year. If we were in other jurisdictions, perhaps that would be the case. I cannot tell you what the delay is at this point. I can only tell you that moving forward, we have not waived my client's right to speedy trial. What does that mean? It means a person has a right to have a case tried within a specific time frame. That's the law. And we have been cooperating thoroughly. Juan Rodriguez, Marissa Rodriguez, the entirety of the family. We've been fully transparent. We believe we've given everything and every information we possibly can, and we're looking for something to occur. As you noted, or as was noted in court when the case was adjourned to late January, we're glad to come back in December, we're glad to come back in January, but when we come back, it would be beneficial if something were done. We believe that there are resources that could be dedicated and donated to this case. We believe that after the investigation and all occurs, they'll come to the conclusion that they could have come to in July, August, October, November, December, and that is that there's no criminality. The fact is that we'll continue to cooperate, we'll continue to be transparent, we'll continue to give them everything they want, but there's a limitation to what we can do. And at this point, we just need the district attorney's office to make a decision. This is a very difficult time for my client and his family. They're emotionally upset, they're distraught, and there's a lot of therapy involved. And as a result of that, and you can see it now, and as a result of that, we just want some conclusion in the case, plain and simple. That's what we asked for, and we would ask the district attorney to make a decision. And with that said, we will see you the next time in court.
Juan Rodriguez, who told the police that he forgot to drop the children at daycare before going to work, pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment. A father whose infant twins died in the Bronx last summer after he left them in an overheated car while he went to work will avoid prison after pleading guilty on Tuesday to 2 misdemeanor charges, officials said. The father, Juan Rodriguez, was initially charged with manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide after being arrested in the deaths of the 1-year-old twins, Luna and Phoenix, last July. Mr. Rodriguez had pleaded guilty to 2 counts of reckless endangerment in the case. On the day the twins died, Mr. Rodriguez, a 39-year-old Army veteran, left his home in New City, NY, for his job as a social worker at the James J. Peters 5A Medical Center in the Bronx. His son Tristan, who was 4 at the time, was also in the car. Mr. Rodriguez dropped the older child at a daycare center before continuing on to work, the police said. In the process, he told the police he forgot to drop the twins off at their daycare center. After arriving at the hospital, where he counseled disabled veterans, he went inside, forgetting that the children were still in the car, the police said. He returned to his car at the end of the workday and drove a short distance before realizing the twins were in the back seat and appeared lifeless, he told the police. At that point, the police said, Mr. Rodriguez jumped from his car and screamed, alerting a passerby who called emergency services. The children were pronounced dead at the scene. I assumed I had dropped them off at daycare before I went to work, he said, according to court documents. I blanked out. My babies are dead. I killed my babies. The temperature outside the car reached 86 degrees that day. By the time the twins were found, their body temperature had reached 108 degrees, causing their organs to fail after several hours in the car, according to the medical examiner's office. Mr. Rodriguez has been free on bail since his arrest and was sentenced to a 1-year conditional discharge, continuing to pray for healing for family. It's never easy losing a child or children to a horrific incident such as this. A disabled man died after his caregiver left him alone in a hot car while the suspect was at his second job. According to WRAL, the fatal incident occurred on Tuesday. The victim identified as 25-year-old Dontarius Batts. Batts was a special needs person and could not take care of himself. His caregiver, Roger Lee Inge Jr. Inge told authorities he worked at Universal Healthcare and had another janitorial job at Cleveland High School. He said he went to his high school job with Batts on Tuesday morning, and he left the disabled victim in the car. He also said the car windows were up and the engine was not running. He said he returned to the car at 10 a.m. to check on Batts, adding that the disabled victim was okay at the time. He said he subsequently went back to work and returned to the car 6 hours later. He told authorities he noticed Batts had died when he returned. At that time, Inge subsequently made his way to a fire station with Batts' body in the vehicle and also called 911 while driving there. Batts' body was found in the vehicle by deputies who arrived at the fire station. Inge also remained at the scene. Inge has since been charged with involuntary manslaughter and he is being held under a $35,000 bond. The Johnston County Public Schools has since fired him. We are heartbroken by the sudden and unexpected passing of our little brother Dante. Words can't express the hurt I feel writing this because it all still feels so unreal. On August 20th, 2024, my brother Dontarius Batts, Dante, who was autistic and nonverbal, was left in a hot vehicle by his caregiver with the engine off and the windows up between the hours of 8 a.m. until a little after 4 p.m., his sister stated. Dontarius Batts, 25, had been under the care of Roger Inge, 55, for almost 10 years. He had even been on vacation with Inge's family before. He would wear out a pair of blinds looking for him, Inge. We had to get safety procedures on the door because he was looking for him so much. That's the piece that's so painful, because he was someone we trusted with our loved one, his sister stated. Alshami and other loved ones can't understand why he would leave Batts in the car during an 8-hour work shift. Batts was the youngest of 5 siblings. A GoFundMe has since been set up to help raise funds for Batts' family. Link in the bio, sending my thoughts and prayers to the Batts family in this difficult time. An Augusta man on parole has turned himself in after being charged with killing his new girlfriend and leaving her body in their home with her young daughters. Parks and Lang had started their relationship over the summer, just days after Parks was paroled following an 8-year sentence for a previous shooting, authorities said. Devontae Parks, 26, is accused of shooting 27-year-old Laquana Lang at her home on 515 Hines Street while her daughters, ages 5 and 2, were upstairs. The residence is located within the Allen Homes subdivision. The children were reportedly left alone with their mother's body for at least 4 hours. When officers arrived, they found a gruesome scene, including child-sized footprints in the blood. The 2 children were forced to crawl through their mother's blood to get help after she was shot dead, police said. Parks had been dropped off at the house around 3:30 a.m. and Lang was shot at or around 4 a.m. that morning. Lang's 5-year-old daughter told officers she heard her stepdad arguing with her mom. Unclear of why and what they were arguing about. Authorities were notified hours later, and Lang was pronounced dead at 11:06 a.m. on Saturday by Richmond County Coroner's Office. Parks was wanted and surrendered the next day. He faces charges of murder, 2 counts of child cruelty in the first degree, weapon possession, and possession of a weapon by a convicted felon. He is being held without bond at the Richmond County Jail, according to jail records. The shooting comes less than 2 months after Parks was released on parole after shooting Brittany McKee in May 2016, according to an arrest warrant from the time. McKee was wounded in her right arm, right thigh, left middle finger, and possibly her genitals, according to the initial deputy report. Parks was definitely a walking time bomb, and I'm sure if Lang knew of such incident with his previous girlfriend, she would not have allowed him into her life with her daughters. Too much of a risk factor, sending my prayers and condolences out to her family. So unfair that her daughters will have to grow up without their mother.
A 3-year-old boy in Pierce County has died after falling into a septic tank. West Pierce Fire and Rescue were called to a home in Lakewood around 2:20 yesterday afternoon. Firefighters pulled the boy's body out of a home septic tank. He had drowned. Authorities say the boy had been playing with a sibling, walked into a neighbor's yard, lifted the lid on the septic tank, and fell into it.
The young child, who was a Lakewood, Washington resident, was pronounced dead after being removed from the tank at around 3 p.m. on Monday. Authorities were alerted to the incident at around 2:20 p.m. that day. Neighbors are in shock after the sudden death of a 3-year-old boy who was playing in Lakewood early Sunday afternoon. The little boy was with his 4-year-old brother and a 6-year-old neighbor playing together in the neighbor's backyard. The boys were visiting their grandmother who was home at the time. Their grandmother was in and out of the house monitoring the children prior to the incident. At some point, the 3-year-old lifted the lid on a septic tank and fell in. His brother alerted their grandmother, who called 911 just before 2:15 p.m. Emergency crews removed the boy from the septic tank around 3 p.m. The child was pronounced dead at the scene. Pierce County investigators say the tank lid is similar in size to a manhole cover, and that the tank is around 7 foot deep and around 4 foot long. There's a septic tank in each yard. The boy's family and neighbors believe there was negligence because that tank was not bolted down, allowing the little boy to fall into it. The neighbor whose septic the little boy fell into stated, apparently the septic tank company had come out and serviced the septic tank back in November and they didn't seal it, nor did they secure it. It's puzzling to me of how a 3-year-old was able to lift or even move a septic tank lid. Not sure on how heavy it was, but it just seems impossible that a 3-year-old has that type of strength to move a lid. Not to mention that it was clear that this septic tank at one point had been serviced and it was aware that the lid was not properly sealed. However, the children were still allowed to play near and around it. Very sad that a 3-year-old is no longer with us due to negligence of an unsecure septic lid or even contacting the company that was responsible. My thoughts and prayers are with everyone that has been affected from this tragedy. A mother in California has reportedly been charged with manslaughter over the death of her 3-year-old daughter. The Anaheim Police Department said that Sandra Hernandez, 41, was arrested on charges of involuntary manslaughter and felony child neglect after she and her daughter were found unconscious in a car in North Fashion Lane in Anaheim, according to NBC Los Angeles, KABC TV, and the Los Angeles Times. Officials said officers responded to the area at around 4:30 p.m. on Friday, September 6, after receiving reports of a medical emergency, per the outlets. A family member reportedly found the mother and child locked in the car on a day when temperatures outside the vehicle hit 104 degrees. The family member pulled the 3-year-old out of the car and provided emergency aid to the child before first responders got to the scene. The girl and her mother were then transported to the hospital, where the 3-year-old was pronounced dead. Multiple bottles of alcohol were recovered from inside the SUV, Police Sergeant Matt Sutter told KABC. Hernandez was later medically cleared from the hospital and arrested and booked into jail on suspicion of involuntary manslaughter and child neglect. ILY was such a beautiful and innocent soul with a very loving and bubbly personality. It's still hard to wrap our minds around the thought ILY is no longer with us, wrote Nancy Salamanca, the cousin of Eiley's father. It was known that Sandra Hernandez was suffering from depression and postpartum depression, according to her deceased daughter's father, Juan Ruiz. "I'm hurt, I'm broken, I'm devastated," the tearful dad told NBC Los Angeles. Ruiz, "I'm angry, I'm very angry. That's what I feel right now." This is not the first alcohol-linked tragedy that has befallen the family. In 2012, Ruiz's older sons, Alaries, 5, and Sierras, 9, were killed by a drunk driver who ran over their tent while they were camping in North Dakota. A GoFundMe page for her funeral expenses will be in the bio, sending my condolences and prayers to family.
Tonight at 11, we want to take a closer look at the moments before investigators say a woman was killed by her rideshare driver on the southeast side of Indianapolis. Right now, 29-year-old Francisco Valadez is under arrest. Now, we just got the court documents in this case. Our Logan Gay has been combing through them tonight. Logan joins us to break it down for us. Logan?
Those documents say Francisco Valadez told 2 different stories to investigators before admitting he shot 30-year-old Shanti Dixon. He reportedly told police she made a comment that angered him. Police say Valadez picked Dixon up around 3:30 Sunday morning to take her home, but she never made it there. Investigators tell us he shot her and then left her body in a wooded area near Raymond Street and South Sherman Drive. Court. Documents say Valadez told detectives he dragged Dixon's body from his car and put it behind a concrete barrier. Neighbors tell 13 News Dixon lived just yards away and had just moved in.
It affects us a lot because now it's like we don't know. You know what I'm saying? And most of the girls out here are single moms and stuff. There's not a man figure there. So, you know, and some of them come in late at night. You know, it's disturbing to know that it's not even safe to even come home anymore. It's kind of disturbing.
According to court documents, Valadez was working for Uber that night. Police urge anyone who encountered Valadez as a driver to come forward. Uber confirms Valadez has now been banned from driving for the company, and they will assist IMPD with the investigation.
All right, Logan, thanks so much. And police tonight are reminding people that rideshare services are generally safe to use, but they do recommend sharing your ride with people that you know. Verify the driver and the make of the car and trust your gut.
An Indiana Uber driver is accused of raping and murdering a mother of two who had requested a ride home from work. Police said Dixon was killed early on the morning of September 8, and her body was found in a wooded area the next day. Francisco Valadez was arrested on suspicion of murder after the dead body of Chanty Dixon, 30, was found on Monday, September 9. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department said in a press release. Officers were called around 1 p.m. Monday to the 1800 block of Wagner Lane after a woman's body was found in a nearby wooded area. Valadez reportedly admitted to police that he shot and killed the 30-year-old Dixon in a fit of rage after picking her up and attempting to rape her in the back of his car. She had a gunshot wound to the left side of her head. He then said he dumped her body in an alleyway in a wooded area near the victim's home. A woman near the scene told police that the dead woman was her daughter, who had been missing since early Sunday morning. The woman told officers her daughter had gotten off work around 3:30 a.m. and ordered an Uber to get home. No one had talked to her since. IMPD crews reportedly found 2 cell phones in the wooded area near Dixon's body. Both phones were identified as belonging to Dixon. A search of the phone led investigators to Valadez. Detectives then went to Valadez's home and began questioning him about Dixon. Mr. Valadez told 2 different stories as to what happened with Ms. Dixon, police wrote. He told police that he did pick up Dixon on Sunday, but then began to tell a story of how an armed black man came up to his car and tried to rob Dixon. Another story, Valadez stated, while he was raping the victim, she insulted his body. This reportedly caused him to become enraged and shoot Dixon in the head. Valadez told police that after the shooting her, he dragged Dixon out of his car and placed her lifeless body behind a concrete barrier at the dead end of Wagner Lane. The Uber driver also admitted to trying to have sex with Dixon's dead body, police said. Valadez was then taken into custody by IMPD and later booked into the Marion County Jail on a felony murder charge. IMPD officials said Tuesday that more charges can be expected in the case. An initial court hearing has not yet been scheduled in his case. Francisco Valadez, 29, was arrested on Tuesday, September 10th, by IMPD homicide detectives and preliminarily charged with murder, as reported by Fox 59. Valadez was identified as a suspect. Police alleged that he was the rideshare driver who picked up Dixon before her death. It is not clear if Valadez has been formally charged or if he has retained an attorney.
Number 9, a missing person report was filed with IMPD. Officers were told that a Chanty Dixon was missing since early Sunday morning. Detectives were told that she was picked up around 3:30 a.m. By a rideshare driver to be taken home. No one had talked to her since that time. Yesterday afternoon, at just before 1 p.m., IMPD Southeast District officers were dispatched to the 1800 block of Wagner Lane on the report of a deceased person found near a wooded area. Officers located an adult female there, later identified by the Marion County Coroner's Office as the missing woman, 30-year-old Chanty Dixon. Due to the unusual circumstances, homicide was notified and began their investigation. Along with the homicide investigators, the Marion County Forensic Services Agency and the Coroner's Office conducted their evidence, and detectives canvassed the area for witnesses and surveillance cameras. Quickly, a suspect or a person of interest was identified. Detectives were able to place that person into custody, and after an interview, they arrested 29-year-old Francisco Valadez, who was preliminarily charged with murder. One part I failed to mention, it was Ms. Dixon was found to have injury consistent with the gunshot wound. Preliminary information suggests that the suspect was a rideshare driver, and he had picked up Dixon just prior to her murder. One thing I want to ask the community now is that anyone in our community who may have had an encounter with this man, hopefully the media will share this picture, his booking photo with all of you, who may have had an encounter with this individual over the last several months as a rideshare driver or otherwise, or have information on this particular incident, to come forward. You can call our homicide office at 317-327-3475 or Crime Stoppers at 262-TIPS. Obviously, this is a preliminary charge of murder. I anticipate additional facts being discovered and additional charges on this individual as we move forward. Those decisions will be made by the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. Like I said at the beginning, although I'm not getting into the individual facts, those facts will be known to everyone once the probable cause is available. This is disgusting, it's disturbing, and we, Ms. Dixon especially, her family, no one deserves to be treated this way in our community, and I am so sorry to her family.